Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And so thank you so much for being here today. And what we'll be doing today is to get into the world of AI with different glasses. And then we'll look at AI from different lenses to get us warmed up with the idea and the phenomena so that we can start thinking more carefully and more creatively and more collectively about what kind of steps we can take. What we are going to do today is we are going to draw in a disciplined imagination methods to focus on the future of AI and what kind of directions it can take and what would happen, and then so develop a more balanced view about the future of AI, rather than creating two camps of I'm a pro-AI or I'm an anti-AI person. It's already here. What are we going to do with it? And what are the cons, what are the pros, and what are the integrations? And for that, we'll be using strategic scenario planning, which is a method used by organizations for decades to anticipate and prepare for multiple future possibilities by creating plausible scenarios. It involves identifying key uncertainties that might shape the future and developing narratives of different potential outcomes, allowing for strategic flexibility in uncertain environments to make better decisions. So for this event, I had the pleasure of working with my great colleagues. We have been working like crazy since I don't know how many weeks. We are going to focus on two aspects, two uncertainties, including regulation and augmentation. So automation, augmentation dimension, just in a nutshell, is on one hand, the future can go where we can have companies more like Uber, for instance, where everything is automated and everything is controlled. Or it can go to another direction where we see in medical professions, where the medical doctors with AI agent, actually they are empowered. They are not replaced. They are not even intimidated. They're actually doing an even better job, what we call augmentation. And also contexts can be very regulated in the upcoming years, which is governmental regulations that can put law and policies and restrictions around AI. Or it might be the opposite. Maybe there won't be any government regulations, but then what might happen? So with those 2x2 dimensions, we have 4 quadrants, including AI automation in regulated contexts, and then AI automation in unregulated contexts, and then AI augmentation in regulated contexts, and AI augmentation in unregulated contexts. I know this is getting extremely technical, and what are we going to do with this? I promise, at the end of today, you will all be talking augmentation and automation because we'll be really getting in and out of these concepts. One method in strategic scenario planning is using a title that summarizes everything so that we can have a conceptual map. So in AI automation in regulated context is going to be referred to the movie called The Holes. And then the second quadrant will be the film Matrix. The third quadrant will be Atlas Shrugged. Fourth quadrant will be Monty Python, like this. I really would like to thank our studio people who are here today since the beginning of this project. And now is the time to get started with our interviews. Thank you. Nuriddin Ikromov is joining us. Nuriddin is a professor of real estate from College of Business. And you define your scenario as Monty Python? And why?
It's actually Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Right, so I chose this for 2 reasons. Holy Grail part, which is Holy Grail is something that's very valuable, everybody is kind of pursuing, but it's very difficult to attain. And so in this context, I think we can think of Holy Grail as kind of dominance in the space of AI. And so there's lots of companies obviously trying to pursue that goal. And so this would be kind of the most extreme version of this scenario, which is currently we have lots of businesses, state agencies, and so on, actually trying to develop their own AI tools, but it's very expensive. And so in this scenario, 1 or 2 companies would come to dominate the AI space. So everybody would kind of like, Windows for PCs, right? So basically monopoly or oligopoly. And so they have basically attained the Holy Grail. So my one headline is OpenAI becomes the first $10 trillion company. And but I think this scenario personally is not most likely. I think it's more likely that going back to augmentation and low regulation. So in terms of augmentation, I don't think technology will technology will improve, I think, but not drastically so. So there will be incremental improvements from what we have now. So one scenario that I think, honestly, I could foresee is AI helps scientists and doctors to find cure for cancer, finally. So there have been lots of improvements in terms of diagnostics, in terms of research for drugs, monitoring patients, follow-up, and so on. So, this scenario could happen. So in this sense, augmentation is not really, AI doing something that doctors do already better. It's actually helping them improve their skills. That's something that they were not able to do previously. And so in this scenario, white-collar employees would become more productive, but the number of jobs that disappear would not necessarily be very high, and the types of jobs that disappear would not necessarily be very high either. It's just people are doing, their jobs, but kind of at a more efficient level or being more productive at it. Another example might be, because this is kind of in the news currently, I did a little bit of research. Turns out there's like 4 million cases, backlog of immigration cases currently, because there isn't enough funding for judges. And so people wait years, sometimes decades to, have their case resolved. So, AI could do things like reviewing cases, verifying information, veracity, accuracy, and looking at the political climates of different countries that asylum seekers may have come from, and perhaps give recommendations to the judge. So, something like strong recommendation to deny, strong recommendation to approve, and something in the middle. And then the judge could then kind of decide based on that to go with that, or perhaps to have actually, court hearing. And now, so in terms of the promise of low regulation, of course, the promise is innovation, right? So if you don't regulate industry, the idea is that, innovation will happen. But of course, there's downside. So for example, in this case, suppose a judge, based on the AI recommendation, approves a case, and this person goes out and commits some crime. Right? So who is responsible for this? So that's where the regulation comes in, and so the likelihood of something like this happening or not, I think is going to depend on how this regulation aspect happens in the future.
So what I see is almost like using the assembly line analogy again of the Industrial Revolution. Which is automation. So with augmentation and lack of regulation comes in maybe the enterprise, but at a global level for wicked problems, not just create another version of iPhone or something to sell more, but really focusing on the societal needs and then creating enterprises and businesses. So what you are then suggesting is that if people are just let alone with that technology, they will converge for the greater of the.
Well, it depends on the context too. So, for example, for this specific case, I believe the AI technology, that as it currently exists, is sufficient. Okay. But why are we not doing this? Again, this is the regulation side, right? And so depending on some countries, for example, China has kind of chosen the other path, which is they're saying, let's pursue these technologies. Let's try to apply, in multitude of areas. And if we break a few dishes, if we break glasses, so be it. The benefit outweighs the current cost. At least currently in this country, we have chosen the other approach, right? So being kind of more cautious. But who knows? In the next 5-10 years, that could change as well. So again, this is kind of a thought-provoking exercise, not to say that this scenario or this scenario is more likely.
Yeah, but in an augmented world, what we can see is more empowered collaborations among.
Correct. So I think the employees would become more productive. They would enhance their skills. Perhaps they would, earn more wages, right? And so, to preempt your question, I think, so in terms of management, I thought about it a little bit. I actually kind of struggled with this question a little bit, but what I kind of came up with, first of all, is management now will probably be more concerned about AI technology management, monitoring risks involved with AI, so things like accuracy, cybersecurity.
Because regulation is outsourced to the organizations.
Correct.
The government is stepping
Correct.
back.
And then in terms of managing employees, so perhaps they will have to pay more attention to kind of how to motivate, right? So now we have very highly skilled employees who are actually making a lot of money as well. So, motivating, retention, things like that might become even more important.
Is this a shared feature with Ryan's scenario?
It's so Ryan's was low regulation
Low
as well.
regulation,
So
they
that
intersect there.
aspect is kind of
There's an
coincides.
overlap.
Culturally, though, in terms of worker culture, this is a shared feature.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of the context of how workers are subject to certain rules, I guess.
There is more room for deviance in
Right,
that cases. Yeah.
And then in terms of college graduates who are perhaps getting ready to enter the workforce, I think it becomes very important to have self-discipline, to be a lifelong learner. Young people, unfortunately, should probably expect that the career they start is not going to be the career they end with. So perhaps they will have to change careers. Back in the day, in most cases, people's careers were predetermined. If you're a peasant, you're going to be peasant. If you're a nobleman, lucky to be a nobleman, you're going to be a nobleman, right? But luckily now we have opportunities to, pursue different things and perhaps change careers. So that comes with, of course, rewards in terms of higher earnings, but also it potentially comes with anxiety of, having to change careers perhaps once or more than once.
And even different social structures of classes might emerge because of the new job careers. And you shouldn't be probably scared about it, but you should feel curious about it, because that change is probably not going to be overnight. There's going to be some dynamics that's going to be involved. And also I think there's also that we can argue that the younger generation will have a voice about which direction things will go, their likes and dislikes, and what they will commit themselves to in a professional environment. There will be some bargaining process, I assume.
Especially on going back to the regulation side, I think since this, it could be, top-down approach versus bottom-up approach in terms of, regulation side. So I would expect young people would have a say or would want to have a say in terms of how technology is, for example, regulated. So perhaps they would like to avoid the scenario that Ryan described and perhaps move towards kind of more predictable future.
So Monty Python and all the scenario that you have created, so what are the implications of that for a variety of things? So let's get some questions to elaborate on the scenario further.
Hello, my name is Matt Lozano. I'm currently a graduate student in the MBA program at the Sacramento College of Business. So my question was regarding globalization and what could the impact of AI be on managers and decision makers, for example, in the US, if different markets are utilizing less regulation or no regulation versus something here where it would be more regulated potentially. And they have to make a choice between a regulated AI tool or employee versus an unregulated one.
So I think this is not a completely new thing in the sense that it has been happening with labor specifically. And, in the current system we have in the United States, we emphasize in terms of what is the job, what is the purpose of, management. And usually the correct answer is to serve the shareholders. And so management is supposed to do everything that will, increase shareholder value. And so if it means, serving the shareholders means moving some jobs overseas. That has been done, extensively. And so I would foresee the same thing happening with respect to AI, right? So if certain jurisdictions, certain countries have lower regulation in terms of AI, I think profit motive, shareholder values are super powerful forces. And so I think without any type of, strong regulatory framework, that's where things would go, in my opinion.
And I think in a broader context, it's important to also acknowledge that AI regulation is only one layer of regulation. In every country, there are different layers of regulation. You got some autocratic regimes where many things are regulated, or you got this strong collectivistic cultures where society is regulating. So that in conjunction with AI regulation or this regulation will create a lot of, I think, room for competition between the countries because of their idiosyncratic credits or strengths or weaknesses, because some cultures can genuinely adapt regulation without no concern. And if AI becomes very unregulated in the US, the gap might be either an opportunity or a challenge depending on where.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think because several questions were related to, inequality and then possible wealth redistribution. And so I think, if AI kind of moves us even further in that direction, there actually could be a blessing in disguise, in the sense that we may have to kind of, as a society, again, kind of rethink whether goal of corporate management should really be focusing on shareholders only. Perhaps we should kind of look at employees, look at communities, look at other stakeholders as well. This is not a new debate, just kind of very quickly. Like there's a essay by Milton Friedman, a very conservative, very famous conservative economist, in 1970, which is the social responsibility of business is to increase profits. Okay, so it was, even in the 70s, there was a question, what is the purpose of business? Should we focus on social responsibility as well? And his position was that your sole focus should be on increasing profits. And so perhaps if AI leads to further, concentration of wealth and income, this could be an opportunity to kind of rethink that philosophy, which, to be fair, exists in other countries, to varying degrees as well.
Any other questions?
Last question. Last but not least.
Last but not the least. One last question. Yes.
My name's Tiffany. I'm not a student here, but I work for Magnet Global as a supervisor. And I did have a question in regards to just investing in general, in the setting of just for an everyday investor, and AI investing tools become more available to the public. Do you think wealthy investors or possibly private equity firms might push back or lobby against unregulated AI to protect their advantage?
So this is kind of related to my field, actually, but it's kind of a question that perhaps requires a bit more thinking. But I think my general answer would be, whenever a person or company has a privileged position where they can reap large profits, they will always oppose any change that would increase competition, right? So I don't know if that answers your question, but in general, I think in terms of investing, for individual investors like you and me, so-called retail investors, AI actually is quite useful, and for most people, even with the current level of technology, the advice that AI would give, I think, is a very good one for most of us. However, for larger investors, wealthier investors, institutional investors, and so on, then the kind of traditional or most common advice perhaps is not sufficient. And so I'll stop there, but I hope that kind of answers the question, at least partially.
Okay, so let's give a big hand to everybody who's in the room.